How the hell, folks? All right,
That's
look. So
funny.
I'm trying to find like a sign off and a sign on.
Mm,
I don't think I found it, but
it's gonna
today we're
take a
going to talk
while.
about self care. We're going to talk about the spiritual side. There's mind, body, soul, spirit. So we're going to
Yeah,
talk about the spiritual side of self care today. My name's
yeah.
Rodney.
I'm Keith, and this is the More in Common Daily Chronicle, where we explore our daily activities and the things that we try to do to execute against the goals that we have, balancing family and all of that stuff. But mostly for our daughters, and for us to look back on in the future.
Yeah.
So self-care, like this will be, I think, the third time that we'll have talked about it. I mean, we talked about it a few times in the
Self care
past,
part
yeah.
three. Yeah,
But
it is.
mostly because it's engaged, right? We've gotten some questions out of it. So
Oh yeah, I got a couple questions. So one of the questions was about the spiritual component and how was I referring to faith when I said spiritual, and how do I hold on to any of it in a world that's constantly questioning it?
mm,
And I think they're really good questions. And for me personally, like when I say spiritual, it is possible to make the leap to faith. If you know me well enough, you can
yeah,
make that leap, and I'm telling you, you can make that leap.
yeah.
And
And when you
it
say
looks really
faith, like explain that real quick.
like having
Like
faith,
religious faith
believing.
or
But
just God.
yeah, I mean, so faith is a belief in a thing that is unseen, unknown,
Okay.
unknowable, unprovable,
Not
perhaps.
tangible, I guess. I don't
Um,
know.
yeah, but that's even
Maybe.
arguable because, like,
Sure.
maybe it's not tangible for you, but it's
Right.
tangible in my life, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And whether it's like, is it religious? Is it just spiritual? Is it like that part for me? So this is where I find my comfort in it. To go to the last part of it, like, how do I hold it in a world that questions it? Well, I also question it. What my faith and my spirituality and my spiritual practice and my connection with what I know as God or source, or how, like, there's so many different words to describe, and I don't want you to get caught up in me saying just one of them. I want you to hear, like,
Hmm.
what I'm trying to say is my practice and my beliefs are mine. And so I'm not worried about convincing somebody else that they need to do the same thing, whether it be my daughter or Keith or the guy I met on the street. Like, they're for me, and I'm figuring them out for me. What works for me and what makes me feel that connection that I'm yearning for. So for me, it's not hard to hold on to because I don't feel like I'm defending anything. So if I hear an external comment about it, it is something that either bolsters what I believe, or it makes me say, hmm, maybe I should change my belief up, or it makes me evaluate it. So that's that hold on part. What and for you, it's a very different conversation.
Yeah, spirituality for me is, it's very, I mean, you've talked about it, we've talked about it a lot, the idea of meditation, and anchoring on the higher power of life, the unknown unknowns, the connection to all things.
Unknown.
Yeah, the connection to all things. I think very much back to the theorized beginning of the universe, and the connection to all the space that lies between you and I, between my fingers, between the planets, between solar systems, galaxies, and all of that stuff. That's very much the spiritual practice and how I connect to that. I don't define it as anything related to a higher power anymore. But at the same time, and I align very much to what you said, like the external evaluation of whatever I may believe may inform what I believe. Maybe, I grew up, in the Catholic Church. So whatever baseline understanding, it might be rooted in, the bearded God. But, I don't necessarily ascribe to it, but a lot of that stuff still sits there. And
Yeah.
whatever I get going forward just really informs how I connect to that. Like you
Mm.
said, if anything that judges it or criticizes it, that, I mean, hey, that's cool. Like, it might not align to what you think. Kind of going back to one of our guests on the podcast, George Dover, talking about absolute truths and things like that, right? Like, I don't ascribe to any absolute truth. And when it comes to that, and I just let it kind of mold how I connect to the world around me. So it it allows me to constantly be connected to it, because I never worry about judgment of it. Yeah.
Absolute truth. That's a good one. Yeah, and I think I do hold some absolute truths, but I hold them like there are some truths.
They're absolute
like,
truths for you, right? They're not.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, there are some absolute truths for the world, like
Sure.
gravity. That's an absolute truth. Like, there are things like that. But then there are my absolute truths about my connection, about my connection with God, with higher power. And I don't hold it in a way that when you say there is no higher power, I'm like, whoa, now we got in fighting words, we got to talk.
Right.
Yeah, so that's just how
it's actually in one of the things that I've enjoyed having conversations about lately. When people say God informed me or God told me, I like to learn more about what that means, right? Because I don't have a connection to it, but there's so many similarities to what I would otherwise.
Way you do.
Right, like how I interact with the space and the world around. Like, there is a lot that when people answer that question, that resonates with me. It just doesn't resonate me with the defined words that are used in the sentence to portray that thought. But anyway, to the question, right? I think that's part of how we balance it. It's making, prioritize how we prioritize it, and making sure that it's not influenced by the outside world, because it's too important for us to hold the truth for ourselves.
Agree. So to wrap today's video, I want to say, what do you think about spirituality? Do you have a spiritual practice? Do you not? Do you think you need one? I'm going to just throw a couple of questions, because it could land a couple of different ways with you. Do you think it's not important at all? Like, just kind of curious. So let us know.
Yeah.
And most importantly, have a fantastic day.
Becca out.